Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions for episode number 168. Today, we are celebrating World Cocktail Day, May 13th, 2024. World Cocktail Day is celebrated, is it really? I don't know. I'm celebrating it on May 13th every year because the word cocktail first came into use with a semi-official definition on this date in 1806, published in the New York weekly newspaper tabloid called the Balance and Columbian Repository. Now that's a good name for a newspaper. The editor, Harry Croswell, responded to a query from a reader. His definition of the word cocktail was a stimulating liquor composed of spirits of any kind, sugar, water, and bitters. This newspaper, the Balance and Columbian Repository, was published in Hudson, New York. It was a weekly miscellany resembling a newspaper of today, having large-sized pages, a lot of advertisements, and among its varied contents were a section of moral and religious essays, called the Monitor, that section. There was a section of poetry titled The Wreath, and then there were articles on women's education and manners, an agricultural section, and some literary notices. In addition, there was political commentary and information as well, a section for speeches and addresses by politicians, proceedings of the New York State Legislature, and even Congress. There were some brief news items and, of course, legal notices. So all in all, it sounded like a very interesting little local paper there in New York. Now, cocktails are claimed by America, but the British had what's called punch in the 18th century. You're familiar with punch. I mean, it's common in our day. But in the 18th century, they created punch, and it's liquor poured into a large bowl and mixed with fruit juices. Now, the mechanical ice makers of the late 19th century and early 20th century became a great help in the making of cocktails, and particularly in the era of Prohibition, 1920s and early 30s. Cocktails became very popular in the speakeasies because if you mix the whiskey with fruit juice, it's easy to suddenly drink it very quickly. And you could kind of disguise, what you were doing with the fruit juice. So that's when they kind of became very popular. So World Cocktail Day today is not to be confused with National Cocktail Day, which is celebrated on March 24th every year. Now, I personally am very new to cocktails, only starting in the past couple of years. And my at-home cocktails are very, very simple. I have learned to make margaritas, and I've got a margarita mix and some tequila and some limes. So it's very easy for me to make margaritas now, but they're not the frozen kind. We use ice cubes. But the other kind of cocktail that I make with whiskey is very simple. I mean, we're talking, it may not even meet the definition of a cocktail, but that's where it's whiskey and a soda. There you go. So tonight, I will be mixing Cutty Sark12yr, a blended Scotch whiskey, with some sugar-free Sprite here. 0 sugar Sprite. So I don't know how that artificial sweetener is going to do with whiskey, but I've previously used 7-Up with Cutty Sark, but not the 12. So my past experience at making this drink is the regular Cutty Sark with sugar-free 7-Up. So changing up everything this time. So let's go at it. Cutty Sark, of course, is a famous brand, though it's not very popular these days. There was a time in American history when this was the #1 Scotch, because Cutty Sark was created in 1923 in the middle of Prohibition, and it was at a time when whiskey was going down the tubes as far as companies and distilleries and all that prohibition hit the Scotch market very hard. But Cutty Sark somehow managed to survive and sneak whiskey in across the border. That, you know, the story is they would sit outside the limit of you know, the 12-mile limit in a ship, and then the bootleggers would come out and get the whiskey from the ship and then go back to shore and hopefully not get caught by the Coast Guard. So at any rate, when I was growing up, I used to see Cutty Sark ads in magazines and newspapers of the time. So like maybe Sports Afield or you know, sporting magazines that my father subscribed to, or maybe Popular Mechanics, something. So I used to see these, and the sailing ship and the green bottle of the regular Cutty Sark got to me. Okay, now, I didn't start drinking until I was in my 50s, but Cutty Sark remained in my mind. And yes, I know it's a cheap blended Scotch, and it's not very popular these days, but nonetheless, here we go. So I've got a little shot glass here, and I'm going to, here I've got a cocktail glass with some ice already in there. I've already had a couple of pours from this bottle of Cutty Sark. So I'm going to pour a couple of shots in here. There we go. And now for the Sprite. Give it a little stir. There we go. And next to it, I'm going to put some in the glass just to compare. Cutty Sark12. A little bit of maltiness, fruit, light fruits, maybe citrusy, lemon lime, so it should go well with the Sprite. Don't smell any peat smoke or anything like that. I don't think that's going to be part of Cutty. Yeah, it's a nice fruitiness there. Not terribly sweet, a little bit sweet. Just a hint of malt, absolutely no smoke. This is probably, you know, full of some Speyside. That's really quite pleasant. I do get, there is quite a bit of a little spicy note to it, a little bit of a burn. I like the burn. Not a bad ethanol at all, but there's a noticeable whiskey burn that I find very pleasant. One of the reasons I drink whiskey. And so here's the cocktail. And that is very pleasant. Definitely. Now, one of the things, I don't know if you saw that, you can't see it on the camera, but when I put the shots in there, there's definitely more whiskey than Sprite. And so I don't know exactly, you know, how, you know, that's up to you what you prefer. Some people want just a little bit of whiskey and a lot of soft drink, but to me that would obscure the flavor of the whiskey, and so I want to be sure to have the whiskey flavor as well as the Sprite. And Sprite or 7 Up can, if you do too much, can really obscure the whiskey. Well, okay, that is a very simple little cocktail for World Cocktail Day. This is Stab the Dragon, out here.